Hello and welcome to episode 1317 of The Sleeper and the Bust. It is Friday, July 5th. I'm your host, Paul Sporer, joined this morning by Justin Mason. Justin, good morning.
Good morning. How you doing?
Not too bad. Did you have a nice 4th of July?
Yeah, not too bad. Can't really complain. Went and I watched multiple day and just barbecued at the house and went swimming and just kind
What'd
of.
you watch?
We went and saw Inside Out
Oh,
2
fantastic.
in the
Yes.
theater, and then we have a outside projector
That's awesome.
that we've got in the backyard, and
That's very
so
cool.
with the movie Twisters coming out,
Yeah.
we thought it was a good time for our eldest to watch the original. And I've never
I,
seen the original start to finish.
I
So,
think we might actually do that tonight because we're
yeah.
also going to see the new one when it comes out. Did you enjoy it? Did they enjoy it?
Yeah, well, they fell asleep.
Oh,
You can't start watching an outside movie until 9 o'clock, or I think it was almost 10
and
o'clock by the time we
yeah, so
actually
it's
started.
already getting late for the kids.
Yeah, so they fell asleep, and but I enjoyed it, so
Good.
that's all that matters.
Yeah, I think it's a good movie. I'm excited to see what this next one brings.
Yeah.
But yeah, we took the holiday ourselves. No Wednesday Thursday episode, and then I also pushed my SP chart to this morning. But it is out. I didn't skip out on y'all completely. I just tried to stay off the computer a bit yesterday. Actually, have some time, watch some baseball, getting outside a little bit. Took Charlotte for a walk, so nice to get a day off, but back on the grind here to set up the weekend. And we're going to talk some two steps. So let's go ahead and dive into it. We do have a pretty big list this week, and we got some names on here that I think definitely belong in that they're not necessarily trustworthy enough to get the pass. Because for those of you just joining us for the first time on this episode, we're not bringing up Zach Gallen, Chris Sale, guys like that, right? You don't need
Yeah.
us to tell you to start them. Even a guy like Nick Lodolo isn't quite an ace, but you're starting him everywhere all the time. So those guys get skipped. We've got some guys in between there, and actually our very last guy, and we go in alphabetical order, so little hint that it's on Washington. I have a question for you. If he's maybe graduating and to where maybe his next two step, we don't bring him up because he's been amazing. But let's start at the top with an old head, the old venerable Charlie Morton. Now, hasn't been all bad this year. Basically, if you're tracking an ERA under 4, you've got some fantasy viability somewhere. For Morton, it just so happens to be in the deeper formats, but it comes with a 125 whip, which is not amazing, but better than normal from him, right? That's usually his issue is whip. And you're tracking somewhere in like the 130s often with him, and that is a little problematic. But 125, 126, I can live with. 396 ERA for Morton. He goes to Arizona and to the Padres. Do you start him in shallow leagues?
Uh, I think it depends on your other options, but I wouldn't be opposed to it. He has been much more stable this year. He hasn't allowed as much contact as he did last season. Last season, I kept screaming "We're gonna get regression. We're gonna get regression." And the regression, while it was always kind of the bad numbers were always in the whip. Like the the ERA never really regressed. He was
Mm-hmm.
and the strikeouts are there. So I have no problem starting him if he's my best option. But I think in a shallow league, you might have better options depending on what's available on your wire.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I think there's definitely a world where you don't have to start somebody like Morton because you have a deep enough roster. But if you are out there searching and you're streaming, he can come up for you in a 10 or 12, and Charlie Morton could be that guy. Now, I will say one of the things that we would normally say is, hey, Atlanta, high win opportunity. It's not a low one. They're 46 and 36. Let's not overstate it. Their offense isn't great though. You're not getting the best support. Morton himself is 5-5. They're just honestly, they're really about 500. Actually,
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking at it right now. They're one game under 500 since May 1st. 19-9, March, April, built Atlanta's record. So keep that in mind too. You might pass over Morton for somebody else because the win probability used to be a big check mark in his favor. I don't think it's there right now for the Bravos. What about Dean Kremer? He gets 2 home starts, which gives it some appeal because we like him pitching in Camden these days. But Cubs and Yankees, where you at on that? Cubs not so scary, but Yankees always terrifying. How do you feel about Dean Kremer?
He looked good in his first start back from the IL. It was against the Mariners, who were like the worst offense in baseball.
Strikeout fest all the
Yeah.
time.
So I don't want to like overrate it, but he pitched pretty well and he looked pretty good in the process. I would probably roll with him. I mean, I'm definitely rolling with him in 15s. I think in 10s and 12s. Again, I think it's another one of these situations where it kind of depends on what your options are. The Yankees start can be pretty scary. But like you said, the Cubs haven't been, at least over the last month or so. So I would probably roll with it in most 12s and some 10s, depending on their options. I think if we're comparing him to Morton.
That's what I was going to ask you next.
Yeah.
I go Kremer.
I think I go Kremer too, just because it's in Camden and you got the Orioles offense behind you.
He gets the tougher matchup between the 4 matchups in New York. That is the single toughest. But Morton's on the road twice. We talked about Atlanta not being so great. Both are at home for Kremer. And like you said, has Baltimore's offense backing him up.
I will say that Morton being on the road is kind of a little bit of a plus for Morton, right?
Not the end of the world, yeah.
Yeah, he's going to Arizona and to San Diego, which are better parks than Atlanta. So
the truest. What do you think about this, by the way, going back to Kremer real quick? He's actually got a reverse or the opposite platoon split that we would expect. 5.73 ERA at home, 2.73 on the road. Now, it's tiny samples. When you add it all up, it's 55 innings. So then when you start splitting it, this is 22 and 33 innings respectively. I don't want to make too much of it. I don't think it's going to deter you, but does that give you any pause? You also mentioned that Kremer, coming off the injury after a month and a half off, had that one start. So anything on the home road split with Kremer?
I mean, not really. I think a lot of that is carried by the bad start versus Milwaukee, who was a really good team earlier on in the season. So, like I don't worry about that one too much.
Okay.
I think
I don't either. His 3 best starts are on the road. That's also helping. At Pitt, at Cincy, at Seattle for Kremer. Those are all scoreless outings in 7, 6, and 5 innings respectively. I like him here. I think it's a good spot. I like him over Morton. That's Dean Kremer for Baltimore. Brayan Bello is a guy that I think at the beginning of the year, I probably didn't put him on this list, right? I think he was a guy that we trusted enough. You and I both like him that we were, hey, we don't need to discuss him. You're starting Brayan Bello. We're not there anymore. He's been on the last couple. Rebounded nicely from a mega dud recently, 2 1/3, 7 earned against Toronto. Comes back with 6 2/3 of 1-run ball against Miami, which is great because you got to do that against Miami. But at least he took on the challenge that he needed to. I mean, back in June, there was 5 earned at the White Sox for Bello. So it's been really up and down, and a lot of down came in that June swoon of his where he raised his ERA over a full run. Where are we at these days on Brayan Bello? At Oakland, home to the Royals.
I like to see that he's been getting strikeouts recently.
That's a positive change with everything else going wrong. At least you're getting some punchies.
Yeah, I mean, you're getting at least a strikeout an inning in 3 of his last 4 starts. Especially if you miss out on that dud in Toronto, which I'm sure most people ate.
I mean, but it was 2 Ks and 2 1/3 though, so it still kept up the strikeout per inning.
Right? The problem was the 3 walks in those 2 2 1/3. So, I don't really hate the back half of this one. Obviously, the front half versus Oakland, and I believe it's at Oakland. So
it is in Oakland, yep.
That is pretty tempting, but the back half being, home versus Kansas City is pretty scary. So I'd probably skip this in most 10s. In some 12s, I might take the gamble depending on my other option. And I think in 15s, you're probably just stuck with him because I don't know what other options you're going to have.
Yeah. Boy, I don't know. Sorry for the silence there. I'm stuck here a little bit. I don't even know if I feel comfortable in 15s right now. I'm not cutting Bello. I'm not there yet, especially coming off the gem at Miami. June was bad. Again, it was a classic June swoon where he went from 4.18 ERA to 5.55. It's on the board. I think in 15s there are some spots where I would maybe just go with a reliever instead. But I don't want to cut Bello yet.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I am nervous about him. The
I
KC one also scares me, especially being in Fenway. So I'm pretty tepid on him. I think I lean a little yes in 15s, but I want to look for a sit, and then 12s. It's on the table if you're desperate, and then 10s, no for Brayan Bello. Jameson Taillon hitting the road for a week, and he's going to Baltimore and St. Louis. Not terrible parks, but one good offense, and then a decent club in St. Louis. You know, they're 3 games over 500 now. They're playing better lately. Actually, 4 games over. Excuse me. Where are we at on Jameson Taillon with the Cubs? You know, you talked about them. They have not been playing their best ball lately. They're down now to 39 and 46, last in the division, and
yeah.
they were supposed to be good this year. But it's not Jameson Taillon's fault. 2.99 ERA, 118 WHIP. Some might even say, why are you even asking about him? Well, it's been good, but the last several years haven't been such that that he gets the automatic tier. But how you feeling about this good start for Taillon with these 14 starts of a sub 3 ERA? Does that make him more or less must start in this year fantasy so far for you with Taillon?
I mean, over his last 5 starts, we're talking about 32 innings, 30 strikeouts, and a 2.25 ERA. I mean, he's really doing a good job at attacking the zone, limiting the walks. Only 4 walks over these 32 innings. These last 32
Is that
innings.
from the time that the White Sox kind of knocked him around a little bit?
Yeah, since
Okay,
then. So since
good
June
rebound from
11th,
that then.
right? So I think I would roll with this in most 12s and probably a few 10s. You know, like I understand that the Orioles are a scary team, and you know St. Louis is not like a walkover team like they have been previously. But
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this is in Camden, which is a really good park to pitch in, and then in St. Louis, which is a very good park to pitch in. So I think I would probably roll with both, hope that I survive Baltimore and get a good start at St. Louis. So in 10s, I think if we're comparing him to Kremer, I think I still put him above Kremer. So I'm probably rolling with him in most spots.
Yeah, I think I'm finding Taillon starts everywhere. Yeah, 10's not like an automatic, but
Yeah.
certainly on board. He's been running well. I think we ride the hot hand here with Jameson Taillon, a guy I've definitely liked over his career too. So I'm happy to
Yeah,
see
me
him
too.
doing well here this season with the Cubbies. So we're pro Jameson Taillon. Andrew Abbott's a guy that I think both of us have had some trouble figuring out because remember he put himself on the radar last year with the crazy K rates he was doing in the minors. And, you know, we know not to just think that what you do in the minors is what you're going to do when you come up in the majors. And then he came up to the majors last year and still put up a 26% K rate. Okay, you know, again, not as high as like the 30 something percent rates that he was putting up in the minors, but certainly representative. This year, Justin, he's down to a 19% mark. With a pedestrian walk rate and a home run problem, it's scary. And yet, I point all that out, and he has a 3.28 ERA and a 1.20 WHIP. Andrew Abbott's results have been pretty successful, even though the core skills are a little bit wobbly. Where do you come out with Abbott here then on a 2-step, an expansion fueled 2-step where he gets Colorado and Miami both at home?
I mean, if you can't start him here, like you can't start him anywhere, right? I mean, you're getting
Yeah.
Colorado away from Coors, and then Miami's been one of the worst offenses in baseball all year. And as much as I don't trust him, especially in Cincinnati, he's been really, really good, just generally speaking, but in Cincinnati as well, where he's got a 3.32 ERA.
Mm-hmm.
There aren't many strikeouts, but he
More
does
at
get
home, at
more.
least.
Yeah, he does get more at home. You know, he's almost a strikeout an inning at home. So I think this is a start in every format for the most part.
I think so too.
If
And
you're
again,
going to roster him at least.
yeah, exactly. If you have Abbott on your team, this is that classic. If you can't start him here, it's a cut. And I don't think it is a cut. I think it is a start. See what happens here. I do realize he's leading the National League in homers, and that's a little dicey. But are Colorado and Miami the teams to take advantage of that on Andrew Abbott? We don't think so. We're good with Andrew Abbott everywhere, including a potential 10-team pickup for a stream.
Yeah.
Gavin Williams is back. He made his debut earlier this week. He put up something. I'm going to give you some numbers in a second. He got knocked around. That's right. I forgot. It was 5 earned in 4 innings on 7 hits, 2 walks, and 2 strikeouts against the White Sox. So even a compromised pitcher, regardless of how good they are, if you're compromised or coming back from injury, making your season debut, even the White Sox can get you. And they clipped him there. Does that give you pause with giving Gavin Williams a 2-step run here at Tampa Bay and at Detroit, then at Tampa Bay? What do you think of Gavin Williams?
I mean, I'm pretty nervous. I don't think I would start him in a 10-teamer, and probably wouldn't even start him in most 12s. In 15s, you're probably rolling with it because these are 2 decent matchups against a Detroit offense and a Tampa Bay offense that aren't overly strong. I hate these guys who are pitching with elbow damage and trying to pitch through it, especially a guy who can throw as violently as Gavin Williams does, and he tends to struggle with command and control to begin with. And I just think that this is a ticking time bomb, and I wouldn't probably use him outside of 15s.
Yeah, I certainly get that with Gavin Williams, that there were some nerves coming back. It's just his season's just kind of getting going. And I did say I would start the White Sox start. I'm open to starting guys coming off the IL. Gavin Williams isn't a stud. It's not like putting an ace back. He has a rookie year that was pretty impressive last year. But there was definitely risk. Took the chance with him against the White Sox. Got crushed. Pulling back a little bit here. 15s, I'm open for Gavin Williams. Everywhere else, I'm playing it very cautiously here. I'll probably hold him, right? Because especially if you picked him up off waivers and you paid some real fab, maybe don't cut. This would be one of those where you can skip a 2-step, but not cut. But maybe let's just monitor a couple starts here from Gav. What about teammate Ben Lively getting the same 2-step at Detroit and at Tampa Bay? Lively's been a big reason why they haven't missed Gavin Williams so much, or the fact that Logan Allen hasn't been good, or Tristan McKenzie hasn't been good and is now sent out. Ben Lively's been a big part of being able to absorb that. He and Bibee have led the rotation, paired with a brilliant bullpen and an amazing lineup this year, to where they're a different identity, right? We think of pitching when we think Cleveland. It hasn't been there except for Lively and Bibee. Do you like Lively here? Has he elevated to maybe kind of just set it and forget it now status in some formats? What do you think about that?
I think he's still a matchup play in most formats, but these are 2 pretty good matchups. Lively's one of those kind of pitchers that he's not really going to help you, but he's not going to hurt you. He's got 8 wins on the year, which
That's huge.
It's just massive. But like the 3.14 ERA is not really supported by 4.20 and a 4.13 FIP and xFIP respectively. He does tend to have homer problems, but he doesn't walk too many guys, so at least it's typically solo shots.
Trying to keep him in check, yeah.
Yeah, so again, I don't think he's a guy who's going to help you because he doesn't get a ton of strikeouts, but wins are a big category in fantasy and not an easy one to always come by. So he's a guy that will regularly go 5 or 6 innings, and the Guardians support him quite a bit. So and both these matchups are not ones you're scared of. So yeah, I would probably start Lively in pretty much all 12s and all 15s and most 10s.
I think I co-sign all of that. I've been happy with what Ben Lively's been doing. This is, kind of what Cleveland does. Maybe not. I think that the talent that they've cultivated is better than what Lively has, but they've found some guys like this where they kind of pluck them and make them better than we thought they were going to be, and that's definitely been the case here with Lively. So we're rolling with it. We're sticking with him right now, and he gets more than a bad start too, right? If there's a big blow up somewhere, it's not automatically out for me with Ben Lively after that, because he's been good enough here through 14 starts that I give him a little bit of a cushion. I had to do this. I had to, okay? Because we've talked about this guy so much over the years, positively and negatively, because I think we've both had some fantasy love for Cal Quantrill and gotten some of his good career work. Speaking of Cleveland, right? And developing guys that are kind of mid-tier and getting the most out of them. He was their Ben Lively before Ben Lively. I mean, he was not a good one-to-one there because he was a young guy that they developed a bit, and Lively's more of a journeyman. But you get my point. Like, that talent where they got the absolute most out of it, Quantrill kept putting up good years. The one thing you did not want to see was somebody like that go to Colorado. And yet, 377 ERA through 18 starts. Now, it comes with a 133 whip. You are paying for it with Cal Quantrill. But Justin, he's on the road for 2. Are you getting to him anywhere at Cincy and at the Mets? Cal Quantrill, our boy.
I mean, I could see it in a 15 where you just don't have any other options. But
which it often happens in 15s. Options are scant.
These are like the 2 worst parks in baseball to pitch in. And I think I would rather, unless
Mets, not.
Oh, sorry. Oh,
but the Yankees
I thought
are.
it was Cincinnati.
Let's be clear though, the Yankees are out of their gourd. I mean, the Mets are out of their gourd lately. I'm not saying that makes you scared of Citi Field. I'm just saying like they've been hitting very well.
Sorry, I thought he was home for the Mets start, and he was at Cincinnati.
Double roadie. Colorado, not Cincinnati. We're talking Quantrill here.
I mean, here's the hard part: is while yes, you're glad he is not in Colorado for either of these starts. He's actually been fine in Colorado this year.
Weirdly enough, right?
And the Rockies may be like just, I mean, and they're traditionally one of the worst offenses on the road. How much run support is he going to get you a win? And he's not a guy that gets very many strikeouts. Like this feels like a low upside play with a low floor. And that's just not something I really want to do unless I'm absolutely desperate. And so like, yeah, NL only 15s, I get it, but 10s and 12s, you have to have better options. There've got to be better options in the wire.
You would certainly think. That's kind of how I feel too here with Cal Quantrill, but 15s, I can see some run. Chris Flexen is like poor man's Cal Quantrill. But hey, we're talking about it. Minnesota and Pittsburgh, anything there for Chris Flexen. He was flexing on him a little earlier in the year, but now he's back up to a 5.08 ERA, 139 whip. I'm sure it's a no everywhere, but I'm just checking with you.
Yeah, no.
Okay. Kenta Maeda, Cleveland and the Dodgers at home. Also seems like a pretty easy no, but let's hear it from you.
No.
Okay. Totally agree, by the way. Davis Daniel, Angels guy who threw like 8 shutout against my Tigers as a debut, now gets Texas and Seattle. We finding anything there from Davis Daniel? I actually didn't see what he did in his second start, but
he got beat up a little bit by the A's in Oakland, which tells you exactly kind of what you should expect from a guy like Davis Daniel. I mean, this is a guy who has been a reliever. Prior to kind of this season being stretched out, I believe as a starter. I don't think he got overly good stuff. I was actually really surprised when he got picked up in a ton of NFBC leagues last week. I was like,
I was too.
This is like the epitome of like, NFBC sometimes where it's like, hey, you got the sharpest players in the world. But also got a lot of people who aren't that sharp because Davis Daniel is not a very good pitcher.
And like it's the effect of 15s where it's like good start equals jump. I'm jumping at it because he had a good start, and that makes people go for them. And I get it. I really, really do. Even though I really wasn't going for him, I was like, I don't know about this. Do we really need to go for Davis Daniel? Yeah, he whooped up my Tigers, but that really wasn't impressing me that much. And then, like you said, he gets beat up by Oakland right after. That tells you a lot of what you need to know about Davis Daniel. I'm not really going for this anywhere, Texas and Seattle. I mean, the Seattle one isn't bad, and Texas also hasn't been playing well. But can we trust Davis Daniel to leverage the strikeouts that Seattle's giving everybody?
No, I mean, he's not really a big strikeout guy. I mean, he's like even in AAA this year, he was at a 24% strikeout rate. He's got a career 20% in the majors. I don't think he is. I think he is a fine number 5 on a major league team, but a 5 on a major league team is not someone you are consistently starting even in 15s.
I think that is,
especially when you're on the Angels.
Exactly, because your win probability is tiny. So I think that's 100% accurate, and that's where I'm at with it. So we can move on. No to Davis Daniel. What about teammate Roansy Contreras, who we definitely both had some love with back in his Pittsburgh? I shouldn't say back. Last year he was with Pittsburgh. But when he's as a Pittsburgh prospect, we shared some Roansy Contreras love. It didn't quite come to fruition. They actually had some regrets about handling him. And it's part of why they don't want to give Skeens or Jared Jones a hard stop. Now, I know Jared Jones just hit the IL, but the way they managed him has made them change their ways here with these two guys, Jones and Skeens. But what do you think of Roansy Contreras now that he's with the Angels? Been putting up some decent work out of the bullpen. Is there anything here? He also gets Texas and Seattle at home.
No, because I mean he can't go deep enough into a game to qualify for a win right now. So you're not even win seeking with a guy like Roansy, and like over his only two starts, both against Oakland, one in Oakland at home, and then one at Oakland. 3 innings, 2 walks, 2 2/3 innings, 3 walks. Like he still has a major walk problem. And like yes, like the stuff is good if you isolate pitches, but that's not how it works with baseball. You can't just be like, hey, I'm going to take his 3rd pitch and his 17th pitch. And, you actually have to use all the pitches in the game that he uses. And that's a problem for a guy like Roansy.
I think that's totally fair. I would say this. If we saw some growth in this 2-step, meaning he started adding to the volume and even pitched 5 in one of them, and had some success too. Like I'm putting a lot of ifs out there. There's a path where I could start to have some interest in Roansy Contreras. It's very early in that process. I'm a good bit away from that. I would need to see a decent 2-step week this week and then kind of go from there. But I'm not starting Roansy Contreras anywhere. What about our boy T-Rog? Trevor Rogers from Miami goes to Houston and to Cincinnati. So Houston, just flat out difficult in general. Cincy is still a scary park. I know they haven't really flourished this year in general or at home. I still don't love taking my pictures there, especially ones that I'm not uber confident in. But what's our current temperature on Trevor Rogers? Another guy that we've definitely sang the praises of in the past. He's 1-9 this year, 4.91 ERA, 160 whip. You starting Trevor Rogers anywhere?
I mean, he's been better as of late. Like you go from mid-May on, so May 15th on, he's got a 3.61 ERA.
Counterpoint, he couldn't get worse. So he had to get better.
This is true. He still has a walk problem. The homers haven't been much of an issue this, as of lately. I mean, it does help when you're pitching in Miami. You're protected. Sure. I don't think he's ever turning back into the guy we thought he was turning into. So I am probably not doing this outside of like your deep 15s where you have no other options. 15s, yeah. Like I don't think we're comparing him to a lot of the other guys on this list. Like I would easily start Taillon or Kremer or Bello or Morton over him.
I start Abbott over Rogers.
Yeah, I mean the question becomes: would you start Quantrill over?
You took it out of my mouth. Quantrill or Rogers? I think Quantrill for me, crazily enough.
Yeah, I think so too. So both these matchups are a bit scary for me, especially when you walk so many guys.
Yes,
and then you go to bad parks.
Houston can really punish that, and Cincy when they're on can too. But those
Cincy's a better offense at home. Like so, I don't think I'm messing with these. I think he's going straight to the bench.
Same. Trevor Rogers benching, if not cutting. I'm not sure you even necessarily need to hold him because your win probability is non-existent. That whip is bludgeoning you every time out. So I think I'm moving on right now from T-Rog. Colin Rea has been putting up a he's been an NL version of Ben Lively. Right down to the team, right? Like Milwaukee has a little bit of a NL Cleveland vibe where they're cheap, but they kind of make it work in different ways. They're also piecing their pitching together while the offense carries them. So a lot of parallels here. And again, that would make Colin Rea kind of the Ben Lively. He's 8-2 with a 3.34 ERA and a 1.20 WHIP, but ERA indicators that say that ERA is fake. But is there enough that Milwaukee's support gets you to a Colin Rea start against Pittsburgh and Washington, both at home?
He just threw 7 scoreless at Colorado. Colin Rea did. Like that's
Unbelievable. I love
it's
baseball. It's so silly. It's such a silly game that we love.
yeah. I mean, this scares the crap out of me, but like I guess you. I mean, it's not like the matchups, right? Pittsburgh and Washington are not like bad matchups.
Terrifying, no.
It's Colin Rea scares the crap out of me because like I just don't think he's a very good pitcher, and there's so little upside outside of the win potential. He's 8-2. Like
Hell
like
yeah,
this,
he
the
is.
only reason why you're going for Colin Rea is because like, hey, you are pretty confident that he is going to go 5 innings because he's gone at least 5 innings in every single start except for 3 this year. And he's on a team that's up runs for him. So, like,
Yeah.
if you're win seeking, I totally get it. If you are not win seeking, no way.
Yeah, I think the win aspect is a huge point because you do have to have concerns about the ERA that you're getting out of Colin Rea here. Totally agree with that. So yeah, if your wins are in order and that's not something that is driving your choice for Colin Rea, then I would agree to pass. But if that is something that you want whip and wins. If you're looking for the W's, I think that's what he can offer best. 120 whip is not eye-poppingly amazing, but it's a positive, and we aren't buying the 334 ERA. What about Christian Scott? He goes to Pittsburgh and then home against Colorado.
Oh, I think I am starting him everywhere. Like he came back from the minor leagues where he was sent down, and he went up against it's weird to say a tough Washington team, and he did fine. Like it wasn't
Yeah.
great, but I just think he's a really good matchups. And so yeah, I think of all the guys we've talked about, maybe I put Taillon ahead of him. But I think, ooh, no,
Three of the four runs came late for Scott. Sorry to interrupt you there.
yeah,
So I do put some credence in that. Like he was pitching very well, maybe got left in a little bit too long. So when I see like a bunch of the runs all in the last inning there, I'm like, okay, that's like a fixable thing where maybe you just need to have a little more juice in the tank, or maybe they need to take you out a little earlier. You were saying that you're not sure that anybody is ahead of Christian Scott except maybe Taillon on the list so far.
yeah. I just think I just think that Christian Scott is a really really good pitcher, and I know he's young and there's going to be bumps, but when you're going up against you're at Pittsburgh and you're home versus Colorado, can you really ask for much better matchups than that? I
No.
don't think that you can. So I think I'm rolling with him even in tens.
Yeah.
And if I dropped him and he's still on the wire, then I'm going running to pick him up right now.
Yeah, I think Christian Scott's an everywhere scoop. One of the reasons I included him here is he has not quite established himself as like a must
Yeah.
start, don't even talk about. The fact that he was returning from the minors felt like it was a good time for us to talk about him. But we're buying him. And I think he can be started everywhere at Pittsburgh and home to Colorado. Now, teammate Jose Quintana also has a two-step, but it's a different matchup because the Pittsburgh series is a wraparound. So Christian Scott gets that Monday start against them. But then Tuesday they're playing Washington. So Quintana actually gets Washington and Colorado both at home, and he's been pitching better of late. What do you think of Jose Quintana?
Oh, again, like these aren't matchups that you're super worried about. Washington is. I wonder how Washington does against left-handed pitching. I'm gonna double check.
I can let you know that while you're talking about Quintana.
Yeah, I mean, again, Quintana is one of these guys that he doesn't get a lot of strikeouts. He does kind of struggle with the long ball at times. So, like, it's for me, it
Washington
is a.
stinks against lefties. Sorry.
Oh well, there you go. So, um, you're not going to get very many strikeouts from Quintana, but you should be able to get a fair amount of length. He's gone at least 6 innings in 3 of his last 4 starts, including he just shut out Washington in Washington.
Mm-hmm.
So, but there is risk here because he's not a guy that, because he doesn't give you strikeouts, like you're really dependent on, good ratios and win potential. I'm a little
Weird to
torn
say
on
win
this one.
potential with the Mets, but the way they've been running lately, yeah, you feel like
Well,
I
and
got to get at least one win here.
you're getting Colorado, who's coming off of, he's coming off home starts, going to the road, which is always the place you want to attack Colorado.
Yep.
The longer they're on the road, the better they get on.
Starts to stabilize.
They start to get used to how those pitches break in, not in the thin air in Colorado. I don't know why I'm so tentative on this one. I think this one should be pretty easy to start in 15s and in most 12s.
I think in a lot of 12s, I get to Quintana as well. There's certainly situations where, hey, I got too deep in pitching, so he's a fit in 12s, but maybe not for your team, that classic thing that we like to say. So I feel pretty good about this.
I think the problem is, like, when Quintana is off, like, he can destroy you.
Well, yeah, because the ball is in play, to your point about the lack of Ks, and so that things can really spiral when that happens. So that is concerning for sure. But I think that we got to get to him here with the way the Mets have been playing and the way he's been pitching. I think Jose Quintana is a solid start in 15s, decent in 12s, probably not in 10s. I just think there's better options. But if it's a deep 10 that plays like a 12, then all of a sudden you're looking at him. This guy's been downgraded to being discussed again just because I don't have a lot of confidence right now. I don't think I'm taking Carlos Rodón out of my lineup, Justin, but it's been bad. 3 mega duds to end June, and then an okay one against Cincy to open July. 5 1/3, 3 runs, 8 Ks, but still 2 homers. So you're still like, dang, that's 7 homers now in the last 3 outings. What the hell's going on with Rodón, and do you trust him at Tampa Bay and at Baltimore in all formats? I know 15s we don't even have to discuss. I don't think it's going to be deep enough to sit Rodón, but what about 10s and 12s with Rodón?
I'm very, very worried about Carlos Rodón. Anytime you see him struggle the way he has struggled, like, over his last 4 starts, you start to go, is he hurt? Is something wrong? Because we're talking about a guy who, over his last 19 innings, he has 8 home runs, which isn't good, but it's not like atrocious. Like, you're not like screaming. He's got 7 home runs over like the last 3 starts. So I mean, you can even cut off that 5-inning start in Boston. Like, just last 3 starts, he has 7 home runs, which is atrocious. Now, he is getting BABIP all to hell over these last 4 starts. It's a 4.44 BABIP, but like, even if you normalize that, like, he'd still probably have like a 5 ERA.
It's not good.
I feel like there's something wrong with him.
It seems like it, right? Because that's the history with Rodón too. So it makes you nervous quicker with somebody like that has such extensive injury history.
Yeah. Now, I mean, he is on the road for both of these starts, so he's actually been worse on the road this year. No, I'm sure a lot of like the worst on the road stuff for Carlos Rodón is heavily influenced by this last start at Toronto, where he just got absolutely obliterated.
And then at Boston before that.
And at Baltimore earlier in the season. I don't know. I think he's just for 15s right now. I think him in a 10.
You think what in a 10? I'm sorry.
I would drop him in a 10.
Okay, that's what I was about to ask next, was if you would cut Carlos Rodón anywhere.
And maybe even some 12s. Like, if I'm having to like pick up someone and there's a good guy on the wire with a 2 start that I'm going like, hey, I really want to use Andrew Abbott this week, or I really, Dean Kremer sitting out there, I think I might drop him in a 10 or a 12 right now. I don't trust him at all. And that if I'm at that point with a guy like Carlos Rodón, like, I think I'd rather just move on. I stayed away from him this year, so I don't have to make this decision personally. But I'm very, very concerned about Carlos Rodón and the way he's looked over the last 3 or 4 starts.
I too share your concerns about Rodón. I'm gonna try to keep him everywhere, so it's a bench in 10s and 12s. I'm really trying to hold. Just because, he had a 2.93 ERA and 14 starts before this. And if this is just a blip and not the beginning of like an injury situation. But I understand Justin's trepidation, especially in 10s where the pools are deeper. And I just always have to remember that there's going to be some names out there that'll be like, oh yeah, actually I would take him over Rodón. So there probably are some cuts in 10s. just go in eyes wide open. You have to understand when you're cutting guys like this, it could come back around, but you could also be the one to pick them back up. That's another reason that you have to be careful or not get too cautious about cutting guys under the idea of like, well, what if they get going again? Well, yeah, then maybe you pick them back up. That's fine. But he's hurting you right now, Carlos Rodón. What about Mr. Maddox himself, Joey Estes, coming off a Maddox performance? For those that don't know what that is, that's a complete game. That's a shut piece on 99 or fewer pitches, not 100 and under. It has to be double-digit pitches. And Joey Estes for Oakland shut out the Angels on 92 pitches. I know it's the Angels. I don't care. Joey Estes dropping a Maddox is pretty hot. Now he gets trips to Boston and Philly. So the difficulty getting amped to 1,000,000. What do we think?
He's been fantastic at home. The problem is neither of these starts are at home, and these are against both like two teams. Like even Char in the background. Don't do this.
Don't do it. Don't fall for the last start.
What do you think Joey Estes' road ERA is this year?
I think his composite ERA is like in the mid fours. So I'm gonna say like 2 at home, 6 on the road type of vibe.
You were very close, except for it's 7 on the road, like 7 flat on the road. He's got a 191 ERA at home and a 7 ERA on the road. He's given up 6 of his 7 home runs on the road. He's given up 11 of his 13 walks on the road. You are not starting him on the road.
So let me ask you this with Estes. Coming off of Maddox, are you potentially in on the bidding in 10s and 12s just to bench him and then pick it up after the All-Star break?
No, I don't think so.
The only reason I wouldn't be is because I worry that the price will get boosted for the 2-step. And if you're not even using it, don't pay the premium for it. Let Estes get picked up by somebody and, let's be honest, probably get knocked around. And then you can pick him up during the All-Star break cheaper. That would be my thinking here. I wouldn't want to try to get in on it and potentially pay a premium for a guy that I can't start this 2-step for Estes. Maybe in a 15, but that's it. But even then, it has to be kind of a desperate situation.
Yeah, especially because they'll reset their rotation after
that's a good point too.
The All-Star break, and I think Estes will be either their 4 or 5, which means he lines up against Houston out of the break. So you're not even using him there. No, I would assume he would be their 4 or 5 in the reset.
Who do you think they're going to start above him?
I mean, Sears, Harris, probably Medina.
I don't know. I think Estes might get one of the first 3 after. But either way, your point is don't get him this week, and I agree. Yeah. I think the premium will be too high, and then if he does get the Houston start like Justin thinks, then you're not even using him for 2 weeks. So I definitely agree on that front. Let's go to Pittsburgh and talk Luis Ortiz. Zach Wheeler's the Philly guy going, so don't need to talk about him. Luis Ortiz for the Pirates is going to get the Mets and the White Sox. So that's 1 up, 1 down. Again, these Mets, we have to respect them. They've been killing it lately. Luis Ortiz has quietly been putting some things together out of the bullpen. 3.27 ERA, 1.24 WHIP. Ks aren't much, 47 and 55 though. He did throw 6 innings 2 outings ago, and then had a relief appearance after it though. So threw 6 innings, 1-run ball at Cincy, and then 2 innings of relief on July 2nd. But now he's set up for this 2-step. I don't think we have to worry so much about the innings since we just saw 6 from Ortiz. Do you like him against the Mets and at the White Sox? Luis Ortiz.
This is just a straight dart throw in a 15. I mean, I like Luis Ortiz. I've always been a fan of his. I wish they kind of kept him in the rotation. But they went out and signed a bunch of guys in the offseason to just hold spots in the rotation away from guys like Luis Ortiz and Paul Skeens and things like that. Well, then they had
2 stud guys emerge with Jones and
Skeens. Yeah. So, but I mean, they didn't need to go out and sign Martin Perez and Marco Gonzalez at the beginning of the year to
you need pitching depth. I don't know. I'll stand by those moves. I get what you're saying about just start the young guy, 25-year-old Ortiz, but you got to fill 1,440 innings. So
I guess.
Or 1,458. You got to have arms on hand, right? Jared Jones already on the IL now. Quinn Priester didn't work out for them, so Now Ortiz is getting his chance, and maybe this works out better that if he can find some footing, then he can just pitch the rest of the summer too, right? Because he only threw 87 innings last year in the majors, and then then another 60 in the minors. So actually, it might not have been too tough to let Ortiz go all year. So I will relent on that a little bit and say they could have gone with him all year, but now they can go with him with no sort of worries about innings the rest of the way if Ortiz is good. Do you like him on a long-term basis at all?
If he can consistently go 5, I am interested in him. Now he is not the guy who is throwing 98 in his rookie season. He's 95, 96.
Too many walks with that. He clearly
Yeah.
had to adjust.
Yeah, but the walks have no longer been the issue, right? Like he's got 18 walks and 55 innings. Like that's fine, and doesn't give up home runs. Like 3 home runs given up this year, and 2 of them came in the same game against Tampa Bay. So like I'm very intrigued by Luis Ortiz if he can show the ability to go deep in the game. The thing you worry about a guy like this is, does he start to have control problems or command problems as he goes deep into games? I think that kind of remains to be seen on Luis Ortiz. But I think in some 15s, like I would take this gamble.
I think so too.
So yeah, I think I'd be okay with this. Yeah,
I think Luis Ortiz definitely on the radar right now. Again, Mets and at the White Sox. I like the at the White Sox. Survive against the Mets, crush the White Sox. You might have yourself a decent little 2-step here from Ortiz. The downside would be if the Mets start goes poorly and they don't give him the White Sox start to catch up. That's always, a concern too with a guy who's not fully established in the rotation. But I like Ortiz in some deep formats. Another guy who kind of got demoted to be back on this list for a while, we were saying, oh, hey, Jordan Hicks, just run it. At the same time, knowing that it was risky, like even at my most confident this year, it was like, well, it was almost begrudging confidence of like, this dude's toting a mid-2s ERA, even a sub-2 ERA going into May. I guess I will start him even though the underlying skills are wobbly. It took a whole nother month. He was a 270 ERA through May, but then June came around and things started to unravel a bit. Not massively. He wasn't the worst pitcher in May or anything, but the volume started to catch up to him. He threw 5 innings twice in 5 June starts, and that's it, 5 max. The others were 4, 4 and 2/3, and 3 and 2/3. Puts up a 5.04 ERA. First start of July, 5 innings, 3 runs against Atlanta in Atlanta. It's just been a lot more pedestrian for Jordan Hicks. You add it all up now, it's a 3.47 ERA with a 1.32 whip. Toronto, Minnesota, both are at home, though. I think the both at home is what gets me there for Hicks. But where you stand with him through 91 innings. He's on your favorite team, so you probably watch him with a little bit more consistency. Do you have any confidence in Hicks in the shallower formats?
I mean, I love to see that he's starting to get a few more strikeouts. But you just never really know what you're going to get with Jordan Hicks. And you've got a mediocre to bad offense in San Francisco. It is a good park, so he is protected by the park, but I don't know. These matchups are so kind of like Toronto is one of those teams where on paper they should be way better than they are, but they haven't been great this year. And Minnesota, I think, is a sneaky good offense. Both are at home, so I'm okay doing it in 15s. I think 10s and 12s. I think he kind of falls in the middle of a lot of these guys. Like I'm probably starting Morton over him. I'm starting, Taillon and Kremer over him and Abbott over him. But like, I think I'd start him over Bello. I think I'd start Jordan Hicks over Gavin Williams and Quantrill. I think the real question is like, would you start Gavin Williams or Jose Quintana?
Yeah,
and I think I think I'd start Hicks.
Quintana for me.
Okay,
I'm a Quintana fanboy though.
I can go either way, honestly, on that.
I have 2 factors here. I'm a Quintana fanboy, and I'm a bit of an anti-Hicks guy in terms of him being a starter. Not like I love his story. He plays with diabetes, insane stuff, fun to root for. But like you have to be honest about the skills. So that's where I come out is like I love Quintana, and I'm not the biggest Hicks fan. So push come to shove, I'd probably start Quintana.
Yeah.
It's not a bad spot for Hicks, though. His whip at home is markedly lower. It goes from 163 to 106. That makes it a lot easier to start him. So even though Toronto and Minnesota both have guys that can swing it, and we're not even going to talk injuries today. Minnesota lost Royce Lewis again, and Toronto's been a nightmare, but they both have some talent that can get you, but not at home. You're not worried as much at home if you're with Hicks. So 15s, yes. 12s on the table. 10s, only if you're desperate. I don't think he needs to necessarily start in 10s.
I
What about,
think one of the scarier parts that it's not so much Minnesota, but it's Toronto, because like one of the things that Hicks can struggle with at times is the walks. And Toronto is, I think, 9th or 6th in baseball in terms of walks.
Oh, dang. I didn't realize
offensively.
that.
So like they're a patient team, and I think that like with the amount of contact that Hicks allows, like could be a really tricky spot for him. So maybe I do lean Quintana here.
Let's go. We're on the Quintana train. All right, we got 2 Cardinals, but again, they also have a wraparound series, so they won't have the same matchups. So Miles Mikolas first is going to go to Washington and then host the Cubs, and then we'll talk about Andre Pallante, what he's going to do. But Mikolas, Washington Cubs, what do we think about that for the old venerable Mikolas? We know what he is, right? An innings eater on a decent team. Again, the Cards are back up to being a decent club. He's got 6 wins, but he has a 5.19 ERA, 122 whip. Those two don't go together. That's a pretty good whip for such a wretched ERA. Are you finding any ways to start him, or does that 9 earned runs from Cincinnati just always loom for Mikolas? Like that's always the potential that he can do.
I streamed him this week in a number of leagues for that Pittsburgh start,
and it was great.
Yeah, it worked out really, really well. His win got ruined, I think, later in the game. But
correct.
I mean, there's always a risk with Mikolas when you allow as much contact as he does. And I mean, that's what it comes down to, is talking about a pitcher who allows over 90% zone contact. So
jeez,
like he is inviting contact.
Yeah.
And he's saying like, my defense is going to pick me up. But that's always like, sometimes balls just find holes. And
yeah,
that one start versus you say Cincinnati,
10 runs, 9 of them earned.
It was 12 hits. Like he gave up,
and that was in St. Louis. You can't even blame Cincy for that. So like that was at St. Louis. By the way, he was losing when he left that Pittsburgh game. It was 2-1. Okay. The 2 runs he had given up, just for anybody that's like, wait a minute, no, he didn't. But yeah, like that is always looming. Maybe not 9 earned, right? That's still pretty outlierish. But 5 to 6 earned is always on the table with Mikolas because he does invite contact, like you say. So it is dangerous. That said, it's also Washington and the Cubs, 2 teams that aren't great. I think I find some spots in 15s, but that's probably it for Mikolas.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about the Nationals, who are we're 21st in batting average, and the Cubs, who are 24th in batting average this year. So 2 offenses that I think Mikolas pairs up pretty well against. So I think I might roll with this one. Like in the places where I streamed him last week or this week, I'm just kind of rolling it over. But I think in 10s and 12s, you're probably not doing this.
You can find better options almost assuredly. So it is still a deep league play for Mikolas, but there's some intrigue there. Now, teammate Andre Pallante doesn't get the Washington start. Instead, he gets, he gets the Royals. I think that alone is enough to kind of push me off, but he's got a 4 ERA and a 144 whip. So the whip's pretty high. He's kind of Mikolas-esque in that fashion. Do you like Andre Pallante at all with Royals Cubs, both at home?
Yeah, I think the Royals start in general just kind of scares me off here a little bit. I mean, he's actually got a higher zone contact this year than Mikolas. He allows even more contact.
Wow. As if that's even possible.
Yeah. You're talking about a guy with a sub 19% strikeout rate. You're also like, one of the things that that Pallante does that Mikolas doesn't do is walk a number of guys. So like, not only are you putting on, guys on base because you allow a lot of contact, you're also walking guys. Like that to me just smells like it's going to end really, really
I think it's a no-go
for this Royal start. So I think I'm
Don't get lured in by the 4 ERA because the 144 whip's what's going to get you, and you got to be careful. Jon Gray. I love Jon Gray. Goes to the Angels and to Houston.
Sorry, say it again because
Oh,
I
sorry about
lost your
that.
first
Do I
part.
cut out? So Jon Gray, love Jon Gray. I really, really do. But he's been sputtering lately, and he goes to the Angels and to Houston. So one good, one bad. Are you getting to a Jon Gray starts anywhere coming off? 3 of his last 4 have been underwhelming. The other was 6 shutty against KC, though, right? So he still shows you those glimpses. But I'm a little tepid right now on a guy that I generally like in Jon Gray. What say you?
Yeah, I mean, earlier in the season, we were talking about like Jon Gray being like one of the best pitchers in baseball from a result standpoint. But I was screaming like, "Hey, this is gonna regress." Nothing has really changed except for I think he was benefiting from the deader ball, and I think his things started to kind of heat up around baseball a little bit this summer. He's struggled quite a bit more, and I just don't think I trust him, especially on the road for both of these starts. Where he's not in a climate controlled stadium like he can be in Texas. So I think I'm staying away from both of these. I just don't trust him on the road, especially.
I don't think I do either. And again, I love Jon Gray, but got to divorce the fandom from the right move here. First 57 innings of the year, 2 homers.
Yeah.
Since then, also had an IL stint. So then coming off the IL, he has 6 homers in his last 23 innings. So to your point there about Jon Gray getting hit a bit harder as the weather's warmed up, are they mixing in some less squishy balls there? Because who knows what the hell was going on early. But it's gone rough. It's been rough recently, and I think you need to be careful here. I don't mind holding in a 15. I would be open to a skip the 2-step, but still hold Jon Gray. But anywhere else, I think it's a no-go, and he doesn't need to be on a 12-team roster.
I mean, since the beginning of June, he's got an 8.10 ERA.
It's been rough.
And he's only 15 strikeouts in 23 innings. In that same time, he's given up 6 home runs.
The first 3 outings back from the IL, though, seemed like they were kind of ramping him back up.
Yeah.
And then he has the KC start, crushed at Baltimore, and then pretty meager against San Diego. So maybe there are some 15-team cuts too. Again, I got to remove my fandom from Jon Gray and realize like maybe you have to move on in 15s as well. Another demotion. We've had a handful of demotions here, guys that we were trusting as recently as a couple weeks ago, but now we have to ask. Yusei Kikuchi, where's he at? At San Francisco, at Arizona, down to a 4.12 or up to a 4.12 ERA. WHIP is up to 131, and guess what? The homers have returned, and I'm not trying to be that guy, but like I never really trust him when it's going hot. He makes me nervous always. So Kikuchi for me is a guy that I've always been. I fell for him the first few times in spring. Remember the first couple springs, he'd look amazing and then not do anything.
I did too. Yeah.
And then last year was good, legitimately good. 3.86 ERA, 127 WHIP. Yes, but this year I don't know. It's just I don't really trust him. I think 15s, I'm there. I still start him if I have Kikuchi. At San Francisco, at Arizona, not bad parks, not terrible offenses to pitch against, but I don't have the overwhelming trust in Kikuchi to start in 10s and 12s with any real consistency. And I think maybe some 12s here, but that's it. What about you with Kikuchi?
Now, I will say, like, the homer issues, like, it's really being weighed down by a 4-homer game.
That's fair.
So, because I want to say, like, that 4-homer game is the only multi-homer game he's given up.
It is, yeah, and he'd been really good with the homers.
Yeah.
So you're right to point out like there is one mega 4-homer game that really shot up the number, and then a few ones here and there dotted throughout the rest of the season for Kikuchi.
So, but I think that it's important to bring up that like Kikuchi is one of those guys when he's on, he can be unhittable. And when he's off, he can really struggle to place things within inside of the zone or even hit the zone at all. Like, right. Like he does have a few games where he's walked a bunch of guys as well. So like, I think he's kind of like this high risk, high reward type of play. So in 10s and 12s, I think I'm probably avoiding. That's the thing. He's going at San Francisco, at Arizona. 2 offenses I'm not scared of in good parks. I I think I'm rolling with him in 15s. I think I could get there in some deeper 12s, but I'm not feeling really confident about it.
That's where I'm at. Like, again, if you've already got Kikuchi on your team, totally get sticking with him in the 15s and some 12s, but I'm not trying to pick him up, I don't think. I think I'd be looking elsewhere if he is available in your 10s and some 12s. All right, we've got two Washington guys to cap it off with. The first one's still been one of the best surprises of the season. I don't think he's quite graduated to we don't have to talk about Mitchell Parker. And yet, 361 ERA, 110 whip. It's been very good. Just kind of want to take your temperature on him. And then Jake Irvin's the one we have to talk about maybe graduating. He's at a 280 ERA and a 1 flat whip in 106 innings. But let's start with Parker. There's a wraparound here, so they get different matchups. St. Louis and at Milwaukee for Parker. What do you think of the lefty in those two starts?
Parker again, he's one of these Mikolas types that allows, a fair amount of contact. You're not going to get a lot of strikeouts from him, but like he doesn't walk guys. We're talking about 18 walks and 84 and 2/3 innings this year.
Fantastic.
Even with some of the more, some of the struggles he's had a little bit as of late, like he's still not walking that many guys. So, the home run rate went up, but part of that is just the 3-homer day he, gave up against the Mets here in his last start. I'm not overly, I'm not overly worried about Mitchell Parker. I think he's kind of a low ceiling but high floor type of guy that I really like in 15s, and that I think is usable in 12s as kind of a team streamer. So when you're going up against matchups like St. Louis and Milwaukee, it's a little bit more concerning because Milwaukee, especially in Milwaukee, they put the bat on the ball quite a bit. Like this is a high contact team that can walk as well. So I think you're probably not getting to him in 10s, but I think you can get to him in a lot of 12s and definitely in 15s. You're starting him.
Yep. Firm start in 15s for Mitchell Parker. A lot of 12s for me too, because you mentioned Milwaukee, and I do respect that offense. Lefties are a bit of their weakness, though. They're much better against right-handers, so I don't mind getting him there. And like you said, 12s, I think there's plenty of 12s where you can go to Parker. 10s, yeah, you can probably find elsewhere. But if you had to, I don't hate it. I really, really like what Mitchell Parker's done this year. All right, and then our potential graduate here, Jake Irvin. Is this our last time, or at least our last time for a little while, talking about him on the two-step? Is he an all-time start right now? 280 ERA, 1 flat whip with 7 wins for Jake Irvin right now. He's been amazing. Do you buy it, Justin, coming off the amazing 4th of July start against the Mets? 8 innings of 1 hit, 1 walk, 0 run ball with 8 punchies. What do you think, Jake Irvin?
I mean, do I buy that he's this good? I don't buy he's this good, but I'd buy a lot of it. Like I'd buy that like he could just be a pretty good pitcher that we missed on in a lot of formats. The crazy thing for me is like I drafted Jake Irvin in so many DCs this year. Not because I thought he was gonna be good, but because like you get to a point where it's like, oh, I really need a starter, and there are no starters left. And it's like, okay, do I go with Jake Irvin or Patrick Corbin? So the places where I went with Jake Irvin, I'm a lot happier. Of course, all my DCs suck, so it doesn't really matter.
But at least you got that one bright shining beacon of Swerve and Jake Irvin. But I mean, he's been very good. I agree. Probably not this good in true skill format, 280 ERA, but it's a 337 FIP. There's a lot supporting this. A 1 whip is amazing.
He doesn't walk guys.
Yeah, I do think he is a rotation lock right now, and that unless it's like 3 or 4 bad starts before his next two-step, I don't think Jake Irvin will be on the list during our next two-step run when he's part of it.
No, I mean, he probably shouldn't be on this list. Like we should probably.
I brought him on this list so that we can discuss his graduation.
Yeah, no, I mean, I just think he's been so good this year that like I said, I think there is regression that should happen at some point, but like you're just gonna have to eat it when it does, because I just don't know
because it shouldn't be a meltdown, right? Like it should just be like a few bumpy starts like anybody can have.
I mean, like when you're not walking a ton of guys and you don't give up home runs, I mean, he's only got one start this year where he's given up more than one home run, and he gave up 2 on May 22nd to the Twins. Every other start this year, it's either 0 or 1 home runs, and it's not like he's had a cake schedule. Like he went up against, he got beat up against the Dodgers in one of his starts, but
That's
he
fine.
blanked the
He beat
Dodgers.
him in one too.
Yeah, he blanked the Dodgers. I mean, he's had multiple Philly starts this year. He's had multiple Atlanta starts. He's had a Cleveland start. Like, he's gone to Boston and been successful. He's gone to Colorado and been successful. Like,
that's awesome.
Like, he's really, Jake Irvin has just been unreal good this year. And one of the reasons why, like, you should, like, be, you know, like, when you draft a team, especially in a 15, but you know, but even like in 10s and 12s, obviously, like, you should be looking to, like, just jettison the back end of your roster to pick up guys who are starting well and see how they go. And if you landed on Jake Irvin, like, your pitching staff is probably doing really, really well this year.
This is that kind of guy that when you're churning early in the season, you're hoping to land on somebody like this that you can actually keep.
Yeah.
And Jake Irvin, Mitchell Parker, both guys from the Nats have been fantastic. Parker still has to prove a little bit more to me, but Irvin, he's locked and loaded in the rotation. Neither are cuts after even 2 bad starts in a row. They get more leeway than 2 baddies in a row from me. Been loving what they're doing. And I think the Nats might be putting something together for the future. And maybe even the future might be this year. Like, if they can find some offense, I think if they could make some key mid-tier trades, they don't have to go out and blow everything up. You know, they brought up James Wood. They still got Cruz down in the minors. Like, a couple reinforcement moves as opposed to like a big splash move, and they might hang around this wild card all year. I could certainly see it with this pitching because they found some decent pitching.
I could see it. I don't know that I believe it. I think they're still a few games back of the last wild card spot, and
yeah, but at least they're in the mix. And I didn't have them in the mix this year.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that, like, we're at the beginning of July and we're talking about, like, hey, if the Nationals have a really, really hot July, like, all of a sudden, like, then they should buy, right? Like, so, like, yeah, I thought they were one of the worst teams in baseball.
I did too. I won't even lie. I thought they were garbage.
Definitely not in the same echelon as, like, the Chicago teams. No. So.
Absolutely not. All right, there we go. Some 2-steps. Lots of opportunity out there this week. Be careful. 2-steps are fun, but they always have risk, all right? Those guys were on the waiver wire for a reason. But Justin, I've had to pee for about the last 30 minutes, so I'm going to go ahead and go. I hope you have a great weekend. You and Justin getting together? You said no or Jason, for a couple Sundays, right?
Yeah, I'm leaving on vacation on Sunday, and I won't be back. Right. So you'll have to find someone to record with next week, and I will see you guys for the All-Star break.
Sounds great. Have a good one.
Take it easy.